intense, painful feeling of repugnance and fear, an oh so familiar feeling to us all. Whether you've gotten this feeling from a movie, novel, or personal experience, the fact still remains that horror is one of the most sought after feelings in the world. With movies like The Shining and novels from H.P. Lovecraft, and now, in the last 30 years, video games supplying this feeling. Video games like Silent Hill and Resident Evil. Horror games like these give you control over the character, which adds to the horror experience greatly. Then you have games like The Forest, which give you a lot more control than the former titles. Stuck in a forest with nothing but an axe and a field guide and some friends. Yeah, they're not too talkative. More of the bashy type of gentlemen. And women. Oh, I can't show that, can I? This is more visceral horror. Getting chased by crazies and beating them when you feel bolder. Of course, when also you get weapons and whatnot and fortify a defense. It's a common genre of horror. Games like these let the player fight back and repel the horror. Scary, but after a while tends to overstay its welcome. Pacing is key in these style of video horror games. But the lack of control over your environment is terrifying. Of course, you've got games where you're stationary, like the FNAF series and all the spin-offs of those. These provide you with a fixed point from which you must operate, limiting you but not fully stopping you, and still allowing you to defend yourself against the horrors that come your way. But what if you had no control over the horror? No hope of stopping the events that will unfold? Now, that might sound boring. Of course, video game horror succeeds because you are given control, meaning that it puts you in the shoes of the person, lets it feel a bit more real to you, and of course, to the millions of other people who play these popular horror game titles. But might I introduce Seiya no Oto, also known as The Song of Seiya, written by Jin Urobuchi. A visual novel horror story game thing. I still don't know what to call it. Let's stick with novel and sometimes use game appropriately. Feels easier to address it in that manner. When you first load into the game, you're greeted by this. Calming music. The music in this game is truly amazing. I still find myself listening to the game's soundtracks years after not playing it. But when you hit a new game, the scene changes. Pretty scary, huh? After a brutal description of what we're looking at, which reads as follows. By listening carefully, I am able to grasp the gist of their conversation and respond when it is required of me. This is necessary to avoid arousing their suspicion. However these creatures may look, they are my friends, apparently. We find out that these things are the main character's friends, at least how he sees them. Following an accident that took both of his parents' lives and left them, well, worse for wear, Fumurori? However you pronounce it. Let's just call him Fumurori. He's left with the world he once knew thrown to the curb and stomped. Everything is covered in his flesh and smells of rot. Because of this unknown mental illness that causes Fumurori to reserve himself, staying away from people, as to avoid being reminded of his seemingly hopeless world. His friends, the monsters we see, notice this, but try to make the best of it, even asking him out to go skiing with them. However, he refuses, as who can blame him? The shock of his parents dying is alone enough to shake him enough to keep him more reserved than normal, but added with this, his world looking and feeling like a nightmare, has clearly had some profound effects on his psyche, causing his insanity to, well, for lack of better terms, decay. He describes that in 3 months, my tears ran dry, and now there is only one loathing left in me, surrounded by hideous creatures that I can only assume are Koji, Oomi, and Yo. I spend each day trying to act as I always have. If I fail this, surely I will be sent back to the hospital. Only this time, I'll be locked away forever. No matter what, I won't let that happen. This relays a message to us, the viewer, that he is slipping away to a degree. He's begun to be more paranoid and believes if he can't keep up a facade that everything is normal, he will be sent back to the hospital and will be locked away forever. He then states he has to ask his doctor whether or not he can go skiing with them, as it could potentially cause drastic effects with his illness. Furthermore, we can see in that just a few sentences, this insanity occurs again, as he breaks, saying, "That's it, I can no longer look at them or bear their screeching any longer." Jumping to his feet abruptly, one of them calls out his name. Fiormi describes this as a spray of stringy slime from the cilia around its voice box flies at me. I try to cover myself, but it's too late to keep the slime from splattering across my face like the yolk of a rotten egg. I'm about to lose it. I want to grab a chair and desk or anything within reach and use it to smash the life out of this creature, ending it all. And so he leaves them, or as he says, flees from them. The monster design is truly terrifying. The developers are keen on not showing the full monster's body, instead showing small bits of it. Topped with the music adds a sense of horror, not unlike the works of H.P. Lovecraft. Then we are left with his final thoughts, "I am not crazy," before the screen fades to black. After this, we see what the real world looks like, as we shift perspectives and now see a group of friends sitting at a table with calm music playing in the background. A stark contrast to what we heard prior. With this, we are introduced to Tenho Koji, Fiormi's best friend. Tsuba Yo, and Takakani Omi, Yo's best friend. This group plays a huge role throughout the story. They shift between the two perspectives, which I'll refer to as the normal and the nightmare, respectively. Rewatching the events again, this time we're able to see what Koji thinks during this event. When he asks Fumori about what he has planned, Fumori responds with nothing really, in a cold manner that makes Koji wonder if any of them will be able to break through Fumori's shell. Then Koji goes on to state that the scars left by the events of that late summer day are still deep all these months later. Each one of them bears them as well, not just Fumori. When Fumori jumps out of his chair abruptly, Koji states, as though that answer drained the last of his patience, telling us that Fumori has become more and more disconnected with his friends. However, they don't know, nor does Fumori let them know the whole truth about his illness, lest he be deemed insane. After Fumori leaves, silence hangs heavy in the air, as the group wonders if Fumori will ever bounce back to who he was before. Then, abruptly, Omi breaks the silence, saying, "I can't take this anymore." Koji responds, saying to give Fumori more time. They go back and forth for a while, showing us just how tense it is ever since the accident. Then Koji says this. He was worse when he went to the hospital, remember? He was terrified of us, like he didn't even know who we were. He even had to be tied to the bed. He freaked out so bad. I'm just glad he's made it this far. Omi replies with, there is still something strange about him. What's with the way he looks at us? Like we're not even human. Of course, Koji tells her to cut it out, less out of empathy for Fumori, and more for the sake of Yo, for Yo has feelings for Fumori, and confessed to him before he was in the ICU. He did not reject her feelings, nor did he accept them either. He had not given her an answer. Moreover, with him in the state he is now, she probably will not get an answer from him. For he no longer views any of them as human. Well, it's not like he doesn't know they are human. It's simply he cannot physically see them as such. Because he's stuck in a nightmare. A never-ending nightmare.